Joining me now is Katrina Vanden, Heuvel, editor of The Nation. Katrina, look,
good to see you.
It's good to see you. And, you know, obviously they're playing games with the numbers, taking from either the middle class or the schools or the poor and giving to the rich. But let's talk about the consequences, too. When you cut Medicaid, do those 280,000 people in Arizona magically get better? No. Another thing that Brewer did, 5,200 people who were seriously mentally ill. She doesn't want to treat them anymore.
No,
well, so are they going to get better? No, they're going to be on the street.
No, I mean, this is, you know, these are about distorted priorities. This is about an extremist Republican flank, which wants to defund the priorities for people. They want to balance budgets on the backs of working people, of low-income people. There is an alternative. There's always an alternative in politics and history, and I think people are waking up, Cenk, and seeing that enough to give tax breaks to corporations and the very richest, and that it's not about deficits, as you said. This is junk math. And what I think Governor Walker has overreached, I really do. I think it's clear for the first time in maybe 30 years since President Reagan just brazenly tried to break the back of labor, which is, after all, the only counterforce for working people in this country against powerful corporations. I think there's more sympathy, unity, and attention being paid to labor and working people, and how these Republicans are just out to lunch when it comes to their priorities.
Now, Katrina, I think you're right in terms of that. We're seeing now in Indiana and Iowa and other places, Republican governors running for the hills because they're seeing the numbers for Walker, and it's not good. And they're looking at the national numbers we showed earlier in the show, you know, where people are in favor of collective bargaining, and it's by a 2-to-1 margin nearly. And they're in a little bit of a panic, so I get that part. But I wonder if everybody else gets what's happening here, because Rick Scott just won. And here's another example from Florida, right? And Rick Scott says that he's going to give away $4 billion in corporate tax cuts and property tax cuts, and he's going to take away $3 billion from education. That's what I'm wondering. Do the people of Florida realize they voted for this? Do they think, yeah, fantastic, take away our education?
I think we're at a turning point moment in this country. In the last, say, 2 weeks, people are waking up, and they're in the streets. There are going to be 50 rallies around this country, maybe 1 million people in the streets of this country. And what are they saying? Enough. You're giving our people's money away. Invest in our country, invest in jobs, invest in education, keep cops on the street, keep teachers in the classrooms. Enough with these perks for corporations. There's a movement called U.S. Uncut, which was inspired by an article in The Nation. If we can recoup from the very richest who brought us this financial crisis and from corporate tax dodgers, we can balance budgets in a fair way. Justice, fairness, concepts that may be coming back to America in this moment.
And look, it's also a matter of truth, too, because, you know, Rick Perry in Texas bragging about how he's got the Texas miracle. It turns out he used 97% of the budget gap that he had. He covered it up with stimulus money, the money he claimed to be against.
And Cenk, think about the idiocy of these governors turning away recovery money. Turning away recovery money that could bring jobs to their states because they are so ideological that they are willing to hurt their citizens to stand for what? An ideology which is pay to play, pay for corporations, pay for the richest, be on their side. There's a reason Scott Walker took David Koch's call, even though it was a prank call. Koch PAC contributed $43,000 to his campaign. Enough with pay-to-play politics. Can we get some people's politics back in this country?
Absolutely. And look, you see it all over the place. And I think finally they're getting called out on it a little bit. And, you know, and you're right, Kasich and Walker turned down stimulus money. Well, they turned down huge stimulus money, and so did Rick Scott in Florida. And after you don't take $800 million for a transit plan from the federal government, then you say, oh, I got a deficit problem. Yeah, you got a deficit problem because you didn't take the money.
The key now is we're seeing democracy in action. Democracy is not just about the ballot box, but let's get to the ballot box and vote these people out, because I think Americans are decent, generous people, and their priorities are not being reflected in these state houses. The polls begin to show that the center, as described in this country, is, you know, the Washington consensus, the Beltway, and now these state house governors. Anyway, we got to fight back because it's the culmination of a 30-year campaign of the right and these governors now to try and bust the middle-class working people in favor of
Katrina,
what, you know?
Thank you so much for joining us. You're absolutely right, because that is the Washington consensus is nowhere near the center of the country,
it isn't.
and we're seeing it right now.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank
really
you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.